10 weeks ago we started talking about tithing. And 4 weeks ago we were talking about goal setting. So I just want to kind of open it up if anybody has anything that they want to share, because it's been 10 weeks. I know for me, on Tuesday, I got a phone call from my daughter's orthodontist saying that the insurance has approved her braces, which, thank you God, that saved us, what, $5,000, right? So, and that we had to do it either way. So right there for me, that was a beautiful blessing. And as far as goal setting goes, for me, I recently had a workshop. I wanted 24 women, and I had 25. So, thank God. And also, I got to go to New York in early December. And I got to go to New York, and I got to see Edwene Gaines. And you know what? I didn't realize it until afterwards. So we went to see her, and she was doing a stand-up comedy act. And then, so we did that. I got to meet her. I had her sign my book, and I talked to her for a few minutes. It was wonderful. And then the next day, we went to Unity of Norwalk because they had her there. So I got to hear her as a minister. And then she did a 2.5-hour-long workshop afterwards. I got to stay for that. So I had like a whole Edwene weekend. And in that weekend, in that workshop that she was offering, she said, can you hear me okay? Oh, you just want more. Bring it in. And in that workshop, she said that doing a comedy act was always something that she dreamed of doing, and it was always something that scared her just a little bit. So I got to be there. I was actually in the front row, and I got to see her doing something that was a little bit scary for her, and that was one of her goals. So I just felt like that was so special. I got to be there and experience it live, you know? So those are all my blessings. So thank you, God. And if anybody has anything that they want to share, that they've experienced, any blessings, then just let me know. Come on up. So today, well, you know what, this whole theme of the 4 spiritual laws of prosperity, it's all about being a person of power, right? We've talked about that when we did the tithing and with the goal setting. And we're going to do the 12 powers today, which is so perfect. But I'd like everyone just right now, take a deep breath. And I'd like you to say, my name is, and say your name, and then say, I am a woman, man of power. Okay, so ready with me? My name is Lori, and I am a woman of power. And I'd like you to turn to someone near you and let them know that they are a man or a woman of power.
You are a woman of power. You are a woman of power. You are a woman of power.
You are a woman of power.
Janet.
You are a woman of power.
Guy, you're a man of power.
Man of power.
Thank you.
Guy, you're a man of power.
So let's get into the forgiveness. Now, I feel like tithing for a lot of people is probably the hardest. For me, I think the forgiveness is the hardest. There's so much to it. And I came across a quote from Carolyn Mace, and she said that refusing forgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. That's what happens. When we refuse that forgiveness, we're hurting ourselves. We're not hurting anybody else. So, are we in our power when we're refusing forgiveness? Of course not. We need to release and allow that forgiveness in order to be the man or woman of power that we know we can be. Now, I know the ego will tell you that by holding on to that grudge, that's powerful, right? I mean, some of us, we can get that power from feeling that. And we're here to release all of those feelings today. Edwene pointed out, and I have to agree with her, and I'm sure everyone in this room will agree, the only time she has a problem with someone is when they're not behaving the way that she wants them to behave. How dare these people not behave the way that I want to behave, or would expect them to behave? And you know what, it goes the same for ourselves. Whenever we feel like we have to forgive ourselves, it's because we behaved in a way other than how, we would have wanted ourselves to behave. But the point is that we're always doing the best that we can. Everyone's always doing the best that they can, and God has only sent us angels. That's it. So, I like the, she also talks about how she imagines what Jesus came here for. And she says, I imagine that Jesus came here to teach us how to materialize and to teach us how to make our lives so much easier and better, you know, with the turning water into wine and the fish and loaves and walking on water. And she said that she imagined that his intention was to come here to get us to that next level, like whatever level that would be. And he got here and he realized, oh, they're like preschoolers. I have to teach them how to forgive. So he got here and he realized, I wanted to do this, like college level stuff. And oh, we haven't even made it to grade school yet. Okay, no, let's backtrack. And I thought it was perfect that the Daily Word was talking about that actually, about how, you know, Jesus came here to teach us this forgiveness, and so it's just so perfect.
Yeah.
Now, like in the book, with the radical forgiveness idea of forgiveness, is that every single person is here as a teacher for you, as a guide for you, as offering a service to you in some way. And I know that it can be really hard. I absolutely know. In fact, Edwene talks about how when she was from age 4 months old to 4 years old, she was sexually abused. Pretty awful. And she said that she was at a workshop of some sort, and she was sharing her story, telling her story, as she had been telling it for her life. And her teacher, the person running the program, said, listen, Toots, this victim stuff has gone far enough. It's a real drag, and it's boring the tears out of the rest of us. Well, you know what Edwene did?
Right.
She went home and she prayed for that man because she figured he didn't understand. And then the more she thought about it, the more she realized maybe he knew something that she didn't know. And she wanted to know it. So she went back to him and she learned from him. And she said it took a long time. But she's now feeling, and she said it to us in the group, she now feels absolutely no anger or upset or victim feelings towards what had happened to her. And what he did for her was he gave her a new story. Here's your new story. Try this one on and see if it works for you. You came onto this planet to be a woman of power. Your soul chose this pathway, and because you chose it, you also chose to take an initiation in the misuse of power at a very young age. During this initiation, you learned what it feels like when power is misused. And in this process, you have gained, and it is horrible. Therefore, it is now safe for you to be a woman of power in the world because you know now that you would never misuse or abuse power. And in this process, you have gained the most valuable of all spiritual gifts, the understanding heart. And you know what? Some people might say, well, how do you know if that's true? How do you know if my soul asked this soul to do this, and how do I know? Does it really matter? No. And she says that. It doesn't matter. Whether or not it's true, whether or not it's accurate, she doesn't care. She can go through her life not feeling like a victim anymore. And she can go through her life knowing that she is that woman of power. The very first sentence of the book. My name is Edwene Gaines, and I am a woman of power. And she owns that. And she owns it because she knows. She knows that. And if she was still feeling that victim mentality, she could not possibly be that true woman of power. You can't. You can't have it both ways. Now, I want to be clear. We're not here to be doormats. Okay, I'm not asking you guys to forgive just so you can be a doormat and let people harm you again or anything like that. That's not what we're talking about. What we're here to do and to talk about is to know, I mean, we can absolutely have clear boundaries, clear, we certainly don't want someone to harm you again, or allow that to happen again. You don't have to like the person, you don't have to allow that person into your life. What we're asking you to do is see this person from the different perspective, see this person from the perspective of they're here to serve you in some way. And let's look at the teachers and the mirrors in our life. So, we've all had so many teachers, right? How many people here have had those people that they just, you keep getting the same type of teacher, I remember one of my daughters, it used to take her the longest time to answer a question. She would just kind of look at you. Or if she wanted to tell you a story, you had to carve out 20 minutes because it was going to take such a long time. And I used to blame her father, it's just like her dad. And not and I would say, just like her dad, and this is so annoying, and right? I would get so frustrated with it. And then I had another child with my husband, and guess what? Same. And I said, I need to learn patience. Okay. Thank you. So we keep getting teachers. And it could be in a beautiful gift of a child just taking their time to telling you a story and driving you a little nuts sometimes. Or it could be something really serious. But in any case, God only gave us angels. That's all that's here. Every single person on this planet is the light of God. Every single one of us. It's not some people are good, some people are bad. That's just not true. So, now, but there is a level of responsibility that comes with this forgiveness, right? So, if we want to be that true person of power, and we want to really have this true level of prosperity in our lives, it means we've got to let go of the victim mentality. We've got to let go of blaming. We live in a society that is 100% focused on blaming. It doesn't matter what happens. Let's say there's a car accident, you see it on the news. Well, the truck driver was at fault, and the truck driver's going to say, well, I had a faulty tire, and then they go to the tire company. Well, we have fault. It doesn't, people are constantly blaming and pointing the finger. Try calling your cable company to talk to them about something. You're going to get the runner in the bill, and the blaming. Unfortunately, we're kind of surrounded by this blaming mentality, and it is where our instincts want to go. But we have to be mindful of that, right? Mindful of that feeling like wanting to blame, and tuning in and realizing, is this putting me in my power?
No.
Hell no. There's no power in this. We have no power in blaming. We have no power in the victim mentality. None of it. No blaming, no problem. Right? Let's just keep it simple. Now, when I was at the Unity of Norwalk, I was feeling pretty good about my forgiveness level. I was feeling pretty good. I've done a lot of forgiveness work. I've done a lot of stuff. I tap a lot, So I was feeling pretty, I'm pretty clear on this. I'm good. I'm at the Unity of Norwalk, and they have this thing where, kind of where we would have our good news, but they're just sitting in their chairs. They say, who has good news? And they raise their hand, and they just share their story. This woman was 1 row and 4 seats behind me. She was right there. Okay? And she was telling this story about how at her work, they had worked with people from Turkey. And there was a woman in her department, and she was from Turkey. And it was her last day. She'd been there for a month, and her last day, she had all her Alex and Annie bracelets, and she was so excited to give one of them to her. And she's telling this beautiful story about this beautiful relationship. And for those of you who don't know, I am Greek. And for some reason, literally, I am not 100% sure because I've never learned any of the history, Greeks and Turks have this whole thing where they go at it and they hate each other, and they're constantly fighting. And what was I? I was sitting I can't believe she gave this woman a bracelet. This is what's happening in my head. Doesn't she know? This woman's, you can't be nice to the Turks. I was raised in Holliston, Massachusetts. I have nothing to do with any of this. None of this is real for me, right? My family never talked about, it was never like, that never came up, the Turks. It was never considered a bad thing. None of it, okay? But there's something to be said for what's passed down ancestrally. There really is. And so I said, so I'm sitting there as I'm listening to this voice in my head that's like so mad, and I'm like, what is happening in my head right now? Why am I angry at this woman who's sharing her good news? It's beautiful news. Why am I upset about this? I started tapping. I just started tapping, and I said, okay, there's something else I have to be mindful of. All right, there's something. I mean, when I think about it, I mean, honest to God, nobody ever told me to be mad about Turkish people. Nobody ever in my life. I don't understand, but it's there. I gotta deal with it. So the whole car ride home, I was riding with a friend of mine who, she also does EFT, and so I was talking to her. I said, "Do you understand what happened to me?" And we talked about it, and we talked through it quite a bit. It was actually really great. But these things happen. They're in there, and we have to clean them out.
I think we get, even in vitro, we get an emotional imprint in our physical body that we don't always know is there.
Right.
And sometimes there has to be some trigger that brings out this stuff.
It's called genetics.
Well, my mom's not even Greek, though. It's my dad that's Greek.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and it just gets passed down.
Yeah.
And, it's just interesting. It's just interesting how that came out. And I kind of took that and I thought more about, cultures who have been oppressed, and they're still feeling the anger now.
Well, the Turks and the Armenians don't get along too well either.
Well, right. There's a lot, but I mean, you could find that with anybody, with any culture, that they don't get along with somebody else.
Right.
And that needs to be healed.
Yeah.
That really needs to be healed in order for us to move forward as a community, as a culture, as Americans. We got to do this. I think I need to do it. Anyways. I'm kind of going off on a little bit here. But the point is we need to clean up this forgiveness in order to clean up our vibrations so that we can have the prosperity that we want, the healthy body that we want, the relationships that we want. There's no room. It's like that whole, I know I've said it so many times, when you take that rock out of the ocean rushes in to fill that space. We've got to clean out all this garbage, which is really what we did last week with the burning bowl.
Yeah.
We burned all the junk that we don't want. We got rid of it, and we created space for what we do want. Edwin writes, forgiveness is about shifting out of our human tendencies to wallow in a victim state so that our minds are clear enough to realize, oh my God, we can have what we want. We can have what we want. Isn't that fantastic? We can have what we want. But we're so busy with grudges or blaming or anger, frustration. And then we're saying, well, why am I not getting what I want? How do you can't get what you want if you've barricaded yourself behind all this negative junk, right? Which was what she talked about in the beginning about the 21-day challenge, with the 21 days of no complaining and no judging and all that. It all comes together. And if you haven't done the 21-day challenge yet, I encourage you to try 21 consecutive days of no complaining. Just do no complaining. Don't even worry about all the other stuff. If you can go 21 days without complaining, then it all kind of falls into place, I think. Now, if you're vibrating that victim, that blame, that resentment, there's just no room for that prosperity. And that's where it all comes together. And I love this connection between forgiveness and debt. Edwin says, where did I have it written? The best way to get out of debt is just forgive. If you're dealing with debt, that forgiveness needs to be your top priority. And when she was giving her talk, she said that when we're in debt, it's almost a way of punishing ourselves. And we're punishing ourselves, and it all connects. So by having that forgiving heart, you're allowing yourself to release all those debts. Now, Edwin is a big fan of Catherine Ponder, who I am also a big fan of. I love that woman. And Catherine is very big on the vacuum law, on creating a vacuum, creating that space for the good. And she talks about a man, she was a minister, so I think he was one of the members of her congregation. And he was in the hospital with a blood disease. Now, this was like the 50s, so who knows I don't know what was happening with him, but nobody could figure out what was wrong with him. He just, every day, just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And they said, we think it's a blood infection, we don't really know, but he's dying, so you need to get his affairs in order, and it wasn't looking good for this man. And he remembered what Catherine had taught him about the vacuum law, and he asked his higher self, is there anything I need to let go of? Is there anything that is causing this that I need to let go of? And immediately, a man's face popped into his mind, and so he laid in his hospital bed, couldn't move anyways, and he just sent this man love and forgave this man. Eventually fell asleep, woke up the next morning. There was nothing wrong with him anymore. They couldn't figure out, doctors couldn't figure it out. They eventually let him go home. He was fine. We do this to ourselves. We make ourselves sick. How many people, you don't have to raise your hands because it's probably, but you all know. You can make yourself sick over being upset about a situation or a person. You really can. It happens. Our bodies are responding. So it's so important that when we find that's happening, that we try to let it go. I see it in my business all the time. Almost everybody that I work with, they'll come to me because whatever the situation is, and at the end of the day, we got to do some forgiveness work. It comes up. It's pretty much like, it's just what we have to do. Now, if you have debt, Edwin recommends that you ask God to help you pay off the debt. Who do I need to forgive? And let's say it's something so big that you can't forgive it. Your human self is like, no, I can't do this. This is too much. Then give it to God. Just say, God, I cannot forgive this person at this place in my life. I can't. Can you please do what you can? And allow God to take it on. And that will, at the very least, relieve some of it. And also, she says, ask God to help you pay it off. She talked about her 5 husbands at the workshop. And so she was like, still haven't learned. She was talking about that. It was really fun to watch her. And but one of her husbands had left her with $60,000 in debt. And she had a choice. She could have fought him on it. Her lawyers wanted her to fight him on it and have him pay it. She could have played the victim. She could have been the person that, I didn't know, this isn't my fault. Blame, right? She could have done all those things. Yeah. And it probably would have dragged on for a really long time. And
she'd have to pay it anyway.
Yeah, maybe you would have paid it, but it doesn't matter, It would have been a whole long, drawn-out process that would have been unhealthy for everybody. So instead, she said to God, God, can you help me pay this off? Help me pay this debt? And within 3 months, an extra $60,000 had come to her. In 3 months, she had it paid off. In the first month, a couple that she had been working with for a long time, and she'd been working with them to, I think it was to sell their business. And it had been a very long process, and then they eventually sold their business in that time frame, and they felt important to give her a 10% tithe on their business. So there was 20 grand, right there. And it was right after she asked God to help her. She had been already doing the work, but sometimes you just need to ask for a little help. So, at the very bottom line, forgiveness equals claiming our power. We can't be people of power if we're holding on resentment and blame and victim mentality. We can't. The two they can't work together. So we have to be willing to let go. And Edwin says, well, some people will say, I have a right to this anger. Bad things happen because of that person, and I have a right to be angry at them. And she says, you're absolutely right, you do. You also have every right to take a screwdriver and stick it into an electrical socket. Perfectly within your rights. Go ahead. And what she's saying is, there's no difference. There's no difference. You're hurting yourself. You're not hurting the other person. As long as you can mentally say to yourself, I'm not going to allow this person back into my life and I'm not going to allow this to happen to me again, that's it. You don't have to hold on to the anger anymore. And she, of course, I love quoting her because I just love the way she talks. She said, the only reason I ever have a problem with someone is because some poor soul did not get Queen Edwin's edict on how to behave on planet Earth. That's what it comes down to. We're so mad at these people because they're not behaving the way that we want them to behave. She continues to say that she noticed that only people I have to forgive are those people who did not do things my way. And there are a lot of them. And most of them are driving automobiles. That's what she says. Right? So what Edwin does is she gives you 5 different styles of forgiveness in her book. So if you haven't gotten the book, get over to the bookstore and get the book, because we have the book and it's amazing. You need to read it if you don't have it yet. But one of the things that she talks about, and she talked about it as well in person, was every night before bed, she asks herself, have I removed anyone from my heart space today? And she says, unfortunately, usually yes, there's a few people. And again, we're not saying that you have to let that person in your life or let that person affect you in a negative way. But what we are saying is that you have to allow yourself to allow them back into your heart space, I guess, so to speak, in seeing that person as who they are, a teacher, in some way for us. The other thing that she does is, and to me, this seems like a lot. I tried it. I did it for 2 days, and I couldn't do it. She recommended writing out, I forgive, with the person's name, with all my heart and soul, and writing it out 70 times for 10 days.
Wow.
That's a lot. For me, I did it for 2 days and I was like, this is silly. I'm just going to tap on it because I feel like tapping is just it's like cutting down a tree with a saw. I'm sure I could do it, but I have a chainsaw, so I'd rather just do that. But if for you, if journaling is what works for you, I think the point is that you have to actually do it, right? I mean, that's kind of like our theme that we've had all along, that walking your talk. You have to actually forgive. You have to actually take the time. She recommends once a year doing a full house cleaning. She goes through all of her past stuff just to make sure there's no more new aspects of a story that maybe she hasn't healed, which I recommend doing as well. And then the once a day upkeep, the once a day maintaining. You got to maintain it. If you don't tune into that forgiveness every day, if you're not in that mindset every day, it can pile up fast, guys. We can very easily start blaming and judging and feeling like a victim again. It can happen. So we have to be mindful. I was talking to Chris Hogan on Wednesday. I've been working with him and he's great. And I was talking to him about forgiveness and what I was doing and what I've been doing, and and he said, Chris has this way of making you feel like all the ideas are your own, but I'm pretty sure that they were his. If you know what I mean? He's a way of asking you questions to get you to the answers. So anyways, because I was talking about writing it out, all these my hand was hurting from writing it out, and then in the tapping and the thinking and the journaling, And then I said, wait a minute, isn't this just like flipping a switch? Like, can't I just flip a switch and just be like, that's it? Like, I don't, but then I thought, no, that's too easy. But why? Why can't you just flip a switch and just be done? So the more I thought about it, I was thinking about how, you know what? Let's just keep it simple. Let's just take the screwdriver out of the socket, okay? And instead, let's just plug ourselves in to that energy. Let's just plug ourselves in like in a powerful, loving way. Let's plug in, a light, or let's plug in something that's safe. But let's get the screwdriver out of that socket, and let's plug in a light, and then let's just like flip the switch. Like, there's the light. There's the forgiveness. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out thing. It really doesn't. We can choose to see a different story. We can choose to tell a new story. We don't have to tell the victim's story anymore. It's not helping us, right? None of it. So, what I'd like us to do before we go into our meditation, because you know how much I love to tap, we're going to do a round of tapping. And then I'm going to invite you to bring someone into your heart space today when we're in the meditation. I'm going to invite you to, if you're open to it, if there's somebody that, feel like maybe it's time to allow that forgiveness. And so that's what we're going to do today, okay? So, everybody ready?
Yes.
Let's all take a deep breath. All right, I like to start on the top of the head. As I release, inside of the eyebrow. As I let go, side of the eye. As I forgive, under the eye. I create space. Under the nose. Space for love. Down to the chin. Space for health. Down to the collarbone. Oh, space for prosperity. Under the arm. I claim my power. Inside the wrist. I am a person of power. So now, I'd like you to just take a deep breath. Relax yourself. And close your eyes. And as you go into the silence, I'd like you to tune into that person of power. That person who acts out of love. Who forgives. And if you feel comfortable, I'd like you to imagine a safe space where you can forgive those who have been placed outside of your heart. We don't have to like them or invite them into our lives. We're just tuning into the energy of letting the negative feelings go. We're tuning into the part of you that is God, the part of you that is the light, and the part of you that is simply love. As you bring your awareness back into this room, I invite you to tap on your collarbone and repeat after me. I am love.
I am love.
I am forgiveness.
I am forgiveness.
I am a person of power.
I am the sum of power.
Take a deep breath. And turn to someone near you and let them know again that they are a person of power. And so it is.
And so it is.
Amen.
That we will start with Charles Fillmore's invocation. We are now in the presence of pure being and immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. We acknowledge your presence and your power, O blessed Spirit. In your infinite wisdom, now erase our mortal limitations, and from your pure substance of love, bring into manifestation our world according to your perfect law. And so it is and will be forever. Amen. So now let us read this 12-power quickening together. Peter is the disciple whose faith, once developed, made him a greatly inspired leader. Lighting the blue candle represents Peter's dominant spiritual attribute, faith.
Through
the Christ faith within me, I am steadfast. With faith in God, I have the courage to trust in right and good outcomes. John was a fisherman by trade and known as the beloved disciple. He was devoted to Jesus and stayed with Jesus' mother Mary at the foot of the cross during the crucifixion. The pink candle represents John's dominant spiritual attribute of love.
Through the Christ's love within me, I am now filled with peace and harmony. I attract good into my life.
Andrew had a great strength of character and was Jesus' first real friend. He was also a fisherman and a brother to Peter. The light green candle symbolizes Andrew's dominant spiritual attribute, strength.
Through Christ's strength within me, I am strong. I have the fortitude to overcome all challenges.
Jesus called the brothers James and John the sons of thunder. James is the disciple whose wisdom and judgment made him a constant companion of the Master. Lighting the yellow candle represents James' dominant spiritual attribute, wisdom.
I have faith in God's wisdom to guide me in expressing good judgment. New depths of understanding unfold in my mind, and divine wisdom sets my world in order.
Philip was among the first to join Jesus. He was able to effect great healings through the power of the spoken word. Philip's dominant spiritual attribute, power, is evoked as we light the purple candle.
Through the power of my indwelling Christ, my words are empowered to shape my world. I will speak only words of faith, wisdom, and love.
Jesus recognized Bartholomew as a man of imagination and vision. He immediately acknowledged the spiritual truth about Jesus and saw him in the Christ spirit. Bartholomew's dominant spiritual attribute is imagination, symbolized by the light blue candle.
Through the illuminating power of the indwelling Christ,
I see good in every person, situation, and event.
Thomas was another fisherman, often called the doubter, because of his insistence on proof. His doubt deepened his faith, as he came to understand that spiritual principles are more certain than observable facts. Understanding is the dominant spiritual attribute of the Christ that Thomas represents, and is called forth as the gold candle is lit.
Through the light of the indwelling Christ, I understand that the divine plan is unfolding, despite appearances to the contrary, through the working of spiritual law.
Matthew, a well-educated and wealthy tax collector for the Romans, left all his worldly attributes of success behind without a moment's hesitation to join Jesus. Matthew epitomizes the power of will. Used rightly, our own willingness is called forth as we light the silver candle.
The indwelling Christ guides my will. I let God's perfect will be done in all that I think, say, and do.
James, thought to have been a cousin of Jesus, became the first bishop of Jerusalem and was highly respected for his knowledge of the law. The dark green candle symbolizes his dominant spiritual attribute, order.
The indwelling Christ establishes order in my life as I recognize that all things work together for good.
Simon had a great enthusiasm for transforming the world. His dominant spiritual attribute, zeal, is kindled in us as we light the orange candle.
The indwelling Christ tempers my zeal with judgment. I develop extraordinary ability in spiritual wisdom, love, and power, and do God's will with enthusiasm.
Thaddeus, brother of James, urged the world to renounce all that would separate us from the goodness of God. Thus, Thaddeus has release or renunciation as his dominant spiritual attribute, represented by the russet candle.
Through the power of the indwelling Christ, I let go all that I no longer have a use for, and release the energies of thought and feelings which are not worthy of the Christ in me. I am free as I move into a field of unlimited possibility.
Judas had hoped that Jesus would become a mighty king. He placed his whole attention on the establishment of a new political structure and betrayed Jesus because he believed that Jesus would not allow himself to be killed. Following the betrayal and the death of Judas, the disciples elected a new disciple to replace Judas, whose name was Matthias. Together, Judas and Matthias represent the redeemed force of eternal life, which is signified by the red candle.
The indwelling Christ guides and governs the wellspring of life within me. As the self-absorbed Judas life unminded departs, my life energy renews itself, and like the phoenix, rises as a faculty through which the life force can express a higher purpose.
So now I would invite you to come forth and light your candle